the favors that I think that the absurdist playwrights, and especially this morning we look at Albert Camus, who essentially tagged the absurd, the theater of the absurd, the crisis of absurdity, which is basically, how is it that it seems that we are wired to long for meaning and purpose, as described in Ecclesiastes chapter 3:11. He has made everything beautiful in its time, and he has placed eternity in the hearts of humanity. Right. Yet why is it that, according to Camus and some of those, and all of them commonly lived in France during World War II, saw a lot of the angst, a lot of the tragedy, a lot of the shock, and said, how is it that we live, it seems almost wired for this, and yet when pushing, when knocking, nothing? What's the favor that I would suppose, and I offer that they give to the church, is they push us to think about major issues. Every philosophic theological system has to answer all four of these questions, whether they're internally consistent or not. Number one, what's the nature of reality? That ontological question. What's the nature of reality? The absurdist will have an answer. What's the nature of humanity? Every theological, every philosophic system has responses to that. Third, what's the problem? Fourth, what's the solution? Albert Camus, in his famous The Myth of Sisyphus, offers that the crisis of humanity is the inherent absurdity of our existence. Now, think with me, if you would, and this is how this morning will go. A few minutes of introduction, then you're going to see my update of Eugene Ionesco's play, The Leader. We call it Celebrity. And then after that, some more commentary, getting you ready for Samuel Beckett's offering to the world. We're not going to offer Waiting for Godot, which has been described as the most influential piece of theater of the 20th century. And not many people are going to argue. But let me set this up this way. Too often it seems that we are like the people Jesus described in this parable about the workers in the vineyard, a parable that succinctly unfolds what is at stake in our dance with pop culture. And attempting to explain the kingdom of God, which seems to be the main thrust of his ministry, his life, his teaching, Jesus tells of a landowner who starts looking for laborers to work in his vineyard early in the morning. The employer agrees to a daily wage with his new employees, yet at different intervals throughout the day. Upon realizing the enormity of the work, he continues to hire more workers. Near the end of the workday, the landowner notices a great number of people standing around doing nothing. When asked, they explain their inactivity. No one has hired us. No one has hired us. I'm going to hint that in the spirit of the absurdist, although not agreeing with their final conclusion, that is the crisis of our existence. People living with a sense that no one has hired them. Of course, the original intention of the parable is to offer divine sovereignty as the backdrop for understanding God's economy and dealing with all people. It is God's intention that each nation and all peoples be granted the same payment of grace on the day of reckoning, despite Israel's bearing the heaviest, lengthiest load in carrying out his divine purposes. And by the way, what's very interesting as we think about these main absurdists, none of them are Jews. Often it appears that many of us are indeed standing around all day, or at least extended portions of our existence, doing nothing. This is the kind of topic matter that the absurdists loved to mock long before the SNLization of the culture at large. They loved to mock the fact that we were thinking that we were going around doing something, but literally we were standing around doing nothing. As if no one has hired us, and subsequently that there is no ultimate payday. And please understand that Samuel Beckett
author of Waiting for Godot, did not believe that there was any ultimate payday. That the ultimate payday ultimately was the grand erasure that meets every one of us. It's called death. And that it's the threshold to an eternal silence of being eaten as food for worms. That's it, boys and girls. Said the absurdist. How much of the listlessness, boredom, and disinterest that hover over many in our culture is tied to having little sense that there is any meaningful work to do. Camus, who our dear colleague Brett Klein would contend, if he'd lived a bit longer, probably would have embraced the gospel because he was very, very intrigued. He wrote about it quite a bit. How much of the listlessness, boredom, and disinterest that hover over many in our culture is tied to having little sense that there is any meaningful work to do. Camus, prior to his death in 1960, at 46, 2 years after having won the Nobel Prize for Literature, the second youngest to have ever won the prize. The youngest was Rudyard Kipling, 42. He contends that even if people think that there's meaningful work to do, it's only temporary. And please understand, at some level, it's only whistling in the dark. And here is the great favor of the absurdist. If we're whistling in the dark, anybody's whistling in the dark. They grab the whistle. They punch you in the gut so that you don't have even the opportunity to pucker up and whistle in the dark. This is the favor that they give us. At some level, and I think that this would be an interesting debate, at some level they are the children of Nietzsche, who said if a man can find a wife for a living, he can face almost anyhow. That's the problem. What's the ultimate why? But sometimes more importantly, work that is accomplished during discretionary times, meaningful service more significant than a paycheck. That's the crisis, even amongst our students. I would argue. Now, I want to set up. You guys can get ready. Our first play. Based upon Ionesco's 1950s work, The Leader. And of course, he had lived, he was born debatably 1909, he says 1912, but some contend that that might be related to his self-congratulatory assumptions. He wanted to be born on the same year that one of his heroes, literary heroes, was born. But it's 1909. He would die in 1994. He loved to mock himself. He loved to mock people that thought that life had any kind of sustained significance. And this is what he mocked in his 10-minute joke, Robert, The Leader, about our propensity as humans to basically sacrifice anything for order. Because what we are terrified by is chaos. And so here, everyone throwing away about everything just to be able to be in the threshold of where the leader might come next. The same 10-minute joke I tell here, very explicitly tipped off to Eugene Ionesco. The same ending to this play as Ionesco's. It's called The Celebrity.
I don't believe it. It absolutely can't be true.
What? What?
The celebrity's coming to town.
Who's coming?
Which celebrity? This one.
Here, right here, where we live.
Can you believe it?
Touching the same grounds we touch, seeing the same trees we see.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable! It's unbelievable! It's unbelievable! no. My celebrity would never ride a bicycle.
Bikes? Who rides bikes? My celebrity would never ride a bicycle. I refuse to believe it until I see my celebrity ringing the bicycle bell.
I'm getting on my bike and riding just like my celebrity. Me too.
Just what kind of a bike is that?
Oh, don't tell me.
I don't know, but I absolutely have to have one.
Oh, me too. It's suddenly ridiculous to think that I haven't ridden my bike in such a long time.
Starting a hybrid metal
This is my celebrity!
That's not the celebrity. I know it looks like a celebrity and paddles like a celebrity probably paddles.
But that is absolutely not a celebrity.
Hey, you're not the celebrity.
Yeah, who do you think you are?
No, I'm not the celebrity. I'm just a bike rider.
Oh,
This is
Ryder?
yeah.
So what?
Yeah, who cares? And you really want to know who doesn't care? Hey, bike rider, you really want to know? You're looking right at.
Yeah, I'm putting my bike back in the garage.
No, I'm not the celebrity. I'm just a bike rider. When does it say that they're supposed to be here?
Absolutely any time.
So it could be any second.
Absolutely.
So we should be on the lookout.
The celebrity could come while we're busy talking to each
So
other.
shut up!
Yeah,
Shut up! Yeah, we can miss the celebrity while we're eating or sleeping or doing anything but keeping our eyes peeled.
Wait! I think I see the celebrity. Way over there! Yes, I think it's a celebrity. Yes, it is a celebrity!
Are you absolutely sure?
Yeah, we gotta be sure this time.
So you're sure it's the celebrity?
Yes, the celebrity is petting a little Scotty dog. Now the celebrity is picking up this Scotty dog and bending down towards the sidewalk. Now the celebrity is picking. Wait, I can't see. Yes, the celebrity is picking blades of grass. The celebrity is picking up blades of grass and feeding it to the Scotty dog.
Oh, is the Scotty dog eating the grass? Yes! Is the Scotty dog eating the grass?
I want a Scotty dog.
Scotty dog is not eating the grass. The celebrity is angry that his act of kindness is not appreciated by the Scotty dog.
There is nothing worse than an unappreciative Scotty dog.
Celebrity throws the dog to the ground.
Yeah!
Yep, since Gabriel.
Serves the dog right for not eating from the hand of the celebrity.
Wait, guys, I don't think the celebrity's enjoying their stay.
No.
Wait! Please don't go!
Like us, poor little boy, you hear her.
We love you!
Yes, we love you. Please don't leave
Can't
us.
you see that we love you?
I'm starting to cry. I'm absolutely starting to cry.
I want to die. I've never felt so despairing.
Now I'm stuck with my stupid family and boring friends. Stupid family, boring friends. The celebrity is gone. Gone. All hope is
I
gone.
can't take it anymore. Life is absolutely no longer worth living.
Is it really that bad?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, it's the end. The end of what? Of civilization as I know it.
Well, maybe it's not the end of civilization as I know it.
Don't tell me you're gonna get all bubbly on us again.
I've learned to take all despair and put it on a little box and wrap it with lovely holiday paper with a note that says, "Do not open until Christmas."
I'm not sure I follow.
That way, hope always shines through.
What hope are you talking about?
The hope of the celebrity's return, of course.
The hope of the celebrity's return.
Wasn't it just wonderful? Moments ago, when we were filled with the joy of the celebrity's possible presence.
It was absolutely joyous.
It was euphoric.
Oh, to feel that feeling again.
Oh, yes.
To see what the celebrity was wearing.
See, they wore their belt, the way they wore their belts, the height of their heels, the way their shirt was buttoned but unbuttoned.
To witness such a revelation, I must shield my
Oh, just to see the celebrity live in person before me.
May we hope once more.
Yes, may we hope once more. Wait, walking with both hands free to put, I don't believe it! The celebrity puts both hands in their pockets! Quick! Come here! It's clear that the celebrity is coming our way! What are we gonna do? We must give him our best welcome. Yes, our best face for him.
No! Our absolute devotion.
No, our undying love.
No. Our absolute devotion.
Our undying
Oh,
love.
no! Wait! We must line the streets and give the celebrity the space they deserve.
The celebrity is running the
But the celebrity had no head.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Well, at least they weren't riding a bike.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I could get my hair cut off.
Yeah, me too.
One of the things that Ionesco did, and in fact, in my view, historically, you understand him by understanding, for instance, an ancient philosopher like Patton, who would confront any human presumption about convention, especially religious convention. Mark or Diogenes, who would purposely, essentially live in a doghouse and mock any palatial splendor, any self-assumption of significance. Gag me with a spoon, essentially, with that pre-SNLization prophet called Diogenes. This is Ionesco, pre-SNL. How does he do us as a church a favor? He pushes us, even in his agnosticism, to reinvestigate cultural assumptions about what we worship. And we do worship celebrity. We do worship the possibility of being more significant in the commodification of knownness. This is one of the draws of social media. 24/7, where we have an opportunity to confirm and see our growth of significance. Please understand, Ionesco especially would pee his pants for the privilege of mocking that 21st century cultural phenomenon that takes us away from the fact that, according to him, death is coming, the grand eraser is coming, and all your presumption is wrong. Now, Ionesco lived through the 90s, so he probably would watch the television that we watched. He probably had a favorite Saturday Night Live event. I wish you could see some of the photos of Ionesco, just his faces, not unlike Beckett, but Ionesco would purposely, into a camera, kind of do a goofy grin, not having to even wink at all. He knew the joke was on him. And on us. The favor he does is he pushes us as Christians to think about our idolatries. Let's move past this to Samuel Beckett, who died a few years earlier than Ionesco. Irish, like Ionesco, spent a great percentage of his adult life in France, lived through the war, World War II, and again, part of the historical landscape of their philosophical, shall we say, theological positions was living through World War II. 20 million people died as a result of that. 6 million Jews, 9 million total in the gas chambers. They lived through that. They said, how can there
be any assumption about God. Probably if any psalm that they would memorize, it would have been the 10th psalm. Why do you stand far off, O Lord? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? Here's Beckett. Writes the most influential play of the 20th century. Two clowns, essentially, waiting for death. And some of my colleagues want to tell me that it's not just about God, but it's about God. They're waiting, they're waiting, they're waiting, they're waiting, they're waiting, they're waiting, and it never comes. How does Beckett do something? Pushes us to be able to articulate, first off, to ourselves, to those that we care about, that God has shown. Albert Camus said in his Myth of Sisyphus that the primary philosophic question is about suicide. Why should we live, ultimately? Why should we live if ultimately there is no meaning and purpose in payday? And of course, where he got the myth of Sisyphus, where he used that to help us understand this, he said, remember that ancient myth where Sisyphus is condemned by the gods. He's mocked them, he's embarrassed them, so they condemn him to what? Push a boulder with all of his might up the mountain. And this is the curse. This is the damnation. The gods say to him, these Greek pantheon of gods say, essentially, what you will be condemned to know is that every square inch and second that you're pushing that up to the top of the mountain, you know. And we want you to be almost immobilized with the knowledge that all will only come undone as the boulder rolls back down the mountain. Camus said, essentially, the challenge of humans is, shall we say, to defy the gods. And knowing that ultimately, perhaps only meaninglessness, we still choose love. We still choose sacrifice. We still choose justice. And he says, ultimately, everything's rolling back down the mountain. These are the kinds of offerings that set up, I would say, pre-evangelistic conversations that we must have. Waiting for Gatto. In the mid-90s, I was teaching at Hampton University, the oldest historically black college in the country. And I was directing the wonderful play of Cheryl West, Before It Hits Home. And my two oldest daughters, Kimberly, Jessica, and Emily, had gone to see the show, and the show was filled with people throwing things, screaming things, just an angst that was profound. As Cheryl West had this happen. And here these, this junior and freshman come home from the rehearsal and say, Dad, please, would you write us a play where we can throw things, we can scream? So I was looking for a vehicle for adolescents, and both of these plays are part of a series of plays that I wrote based upon the absurdist classics for teenagers. This is based upon Beckett's Waiting for Gatto, waiting for the call. Now, before I got a little bit more to do. It premiered in 1999 at my daughter's high school, Kellum High School, remember, Beth, in May of 1999. And it was a bigger auditorium than this. As soon as it started, everything went dead quiet. The audience had a sense that something had happened with these two Patton weird girls. The first show that you saw, Celebrity, based upon Ionesco's The Leader, has been done all over the place, okay? And a lot of wonderful productions from a variety of ages. This show has only been done a few times. And the first time it was done as well as my daughters at their premiere in May of 1999 is when we met these two ladies. We got a lot of wonderful students here, but they always knock me out. And you guys can get ready for waiting. And I want you to just prepare to get a sense of a similar kind of angst. Two sisters, driven to an adolescent nihilism that they can't explain, only to know that they're dying ultimately. What do you say? Waiting for the call based upon Godot's, based upon Beckett's waiting for Godot.
By the way, after it's done, we'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A. By the way, you'll note 1999 it premiered. Note the communication technology differences. Social media would be another 8 years away. Okay. You remember having to do star 69 to find out who called? That might be weird for some of you, but this is a 1990s.
So do you think they'll call? They said they'd call. Yeah, said they'd call. Stop worrying. Who said I was worrying? No one said you were worried. Yeah, you did. That's not something you have to say when you see someone say the same thing 10 times in the last 5 minutes.
What did I say 10 times?
You kept asking if I thought they'd
I did
call.
not say that 10 times.
Okay, I know.
Well, it wasn't 10. I know that.
So you think they'll call?
No, that's 10 times. And no, I don't think they'll ever call. They're despicable lowlives setting up some more cosmic trick knowing we'll just camp by the phone for the rest of our miserable existence waiting for the phone.
Okay, they'll call.
No. Our lives are just one uninterrupted blur of tedium waiting for the intervention and the rate that our phone.
All right, already. I won't ask again. One uninterrupted blur of what?
Tedium. What about that chick?
Toenails, maybe.
Oh no, it's them! Yeah, it might be. That's very true.
Well, aren't you gonna answer it?
I'm reading a magazine right now.
Oh, come on, answer the phone.
But we're the same distance away from the phone.
Please pick it up.
So we have equal responsibility to pick it up.
Answer the phone.
You pick it up.
I can't.
Why not? You just can't. This is so stupid. Why can't you?
I can't.
So stupid. Hello? I hung up.
It was them, wasn't it?
Only found the silent phone.
It was them. I know it was.
There's no way you can know it was them. There's no way.
Yeah, but they said they'd call, so it could have been them.
Right.
I am right. It absolutely could have been them. And now they're not going to call us back because they think we're gone.
Isn't there a way you can find that info?
Yeah, star 69. You dial star 69 and it tells you to call.
So do it.
No,
Why not?
because I'd feel worse if I absolutely positively knew that it was them.
Right.
I am right. I think we've gone shopping or something.
Do you want to go shopping or something?
Well, we can't because they might call. Or something. You think they went to the mall to find us?
Yeah. And when they don't find us there, they'll be sure to call us here.
You really think so?
Absolutely, Beth. I am totally convinced they went to the mall to find us since they couldn't get us here. And that search will be unsuccessful too.
So they went to the mall to find us because you wouldn't answer the phone?
Look, they'll be searching for an hour before they call again. How are you going to socially survive till then?
I don't know.
Me neither.
It was them, I know it.
You didn't answer my question.
What?
How are you going to socially survive the next 60 minutes until they call again?
Shut up, I don't know.
Can I make a few suggestions?
Like what?
Take a nap. Not tired. Read a magazine.
Don't feel like it.
Rule your own television universe. Feel the power.
I'd rather eat potato chips.
when you're in there, could you mind toasting me a bagel? What? Could you toast me a bagel? The cream cheese, the strawberry flavor. I don't want to grow. Swallow, my dear, swallow. There's no more bagels. So the strawberry cream cheese is just sitting there. We didn't put bagels on our things. Okay, okay. I'd rather have a bagel with strawberry cream cheese. Swallow, my dear, swallow. I'd rather have a bagel.
Life demands sacrifice.
I'm thirsty.
Yeah, me too.
Is there anything to drink in the fridge?
Nothing. Water.
You're so boring.
Not if you're thirsty.
So boring.
I guess you're right. It is pretty boring.
Rather be thirsty. Are you sure there's nothing to drink?
Nothing that doesn't come out of the faucet.
Nothing. Hey, what's this? What? How come I found this time talking about ketchup, taco sauce, and strawberry cream cheese?
What would bet you wouldn't find that?
No kidding. Answer the question.
I was saving it for later.
Nothing but water, huh? You're such a liar, you know that?
But you're not.
It's not as sweet as you.
Fine. I'll admit that I'm a bigger liar if you like to tax it.
Remember, you're admitting you're a bigger liar.
I'm a bigger liar. Now give me some.
I'll keep the gems in the family. I'll get a glass.
Rachel! You did that on purpose!
You did the soda on purpose.
Hiding the soda does not equal ruining a perfectly good t-shirt.
Yeah, that t-shirt's real fast.
Oh, like what you're wearing makes teen fashion history.
I'll take some. Thanks.
So do you think they'll call?
11 times.
I'm obsessing. I know. We're obsessing.
Yeah, I know, I'm obsessing, but I really want them to call. I mean, I know it'll be a really great phone call, and how many times do you get a really great phone call like that right out of the blue?
This isn't gonna be right out of the blue.
You know what I mean? I mean, you're sitting there and you're bored and you're wishing that you could be anywhere else, and then you get this phone call. I mean, this really great phone call, and you realize that you'd rather be talking on the phone than go to the greatest amusement park in the world, because talking on the phone to them is better than riding the greatest roller coaster in the universe. You know what I mean, Rach? Rachel?
I'm just thinking about how many teenagers get to compare the greatest roller coaster ride in the universe with the greatest phone conversation in the galaxy.
You think it's stupid, don't you?
No, no.
It's stupid.
No, Beth, not at all. By the way, Cedar Point is installing the ultimate thrill ride. It combines the world's largest and fastest roller coaster with bones available for each rider. I thought of talking on the phone while plunging down that first hill would be exhilarating beyond belief. Who told you that?
Hey, what's this?
Oh, that's the pulled out of the phone trick.
Really funny, Rachel.
Really, I wasn't trying to be funny. I was
No, you were just trying to pull a trick when you knew that I'd be calling at any second.
Except for you, the one who put the soda in the
Honey, the soda does not equal pulling the phone.
That makes you the ethics
Oh,
expert.
just shut up. Hello? Hello? Nothing. Not even the dial tone. It's probably broken.
It's not broken, and whoever it was will call back.
No, they won't. I know they won't.
They're probably still at the mall looking for us, okay? Don't worry about it.
I'm not worrying. And if I am, it's only because you pulled the phone cord. And if it's broken, Mom's gonna make you pay for it.
It's not broken. Just pick up the receiver and see if you can dial it.
No, wait, they might call again and then we miss it because we'd be too busy checking to see if there's a dial tone.
So stupid. See, just dial the phone. It's not broken.
I didn't hear it. And they might have just called again.
They did not. And you didn't hear what?
The dial tone. So how do I know it's not broken?
receiver and see the dial tone. Proof that the phone lives.
No, they might call again.
It doesn't matter how many times they call if it's broken. That phone until it's fixed will never live again.
Then it's dead.
Pick up the phone.
No.
Pick up the phone.
No.
So stupid. Pick up, stop.
Rachel, look what you did!
Oh, but wait. What is that I hear? Miracle of miracles. The title tone.
So do you think that they'll call? But I think you need to find something else to worry about. You're right. And I need to get a life, don't I? Rachel, I guess I do sort of worry too much, don't I? Go ahead. Worry about important things, like not being able to play her. Well, I don't really like her eyebrows.
We do have better eyebrows, don't we?
Better eyebrows. One less thing to worry about. And then probably never ever fall. Stop.
They found new friends in the mall.
Rachel, stop it.
And it was right after they tried to call
Stop!
again, but the line was
Rachel,
busy.
stop!
They grabbed the phone.
Stop!
They'll never call me.
Don't tease me like that. What if they really did never call, just like Dad never calls anymore? What if they really did never call us, just like Dad never called?
What does that have to do with anything?
He used to live here. And then he moved, so. And then he used to visit us, but then he moved farther away.
So?
And then he used to call us twice a week, and now he never calls.
So they didn't get along. Get over it. It happened.
No, but he used to live here, and then he used to visit, and then he used to call us, and then
He got a promotion.
So?
He had to.
So?
He married again.
So what?
So that's how life is.
No, that's how he is.
No, that is how life is.
No, that's how he is.
And if our friends don't ever call, if they search for them all the time and find us and get bored with us, they never find a TV show that ultimately satisfies and decide to go for the ultimate thrill ride and fall off the face of the planet, and then we'll lose our friend. Like we lost our dad.
That's not how life should be.
But all relationships eventually die, okay? Get over it.
So have you gotten over it?
I live with it.
Thank God for the magazines telling us how to rate kisses and remove eyeshadow. Live with it. And thank God for MTV.
Why did you do that?
Because I want to go back to the old days where they had to get up out of their chairs to change the channel. Where friends and family didn't leave because they were bored.
That's something so
No! This is not how life should be. And no, I don't think all relationships have to
So
die.
you're entitled to your opinion now. Get the remote and see if you broke it.
All remotes have to die, not all relationships.
Is it broken?
I don't think so.
Good!
There! Now it's dead. Bring on the old days.
And who's gonna get a new one?
No one. We're gonna get up off our butts and we're gonna change the channel like they used
Yeah,
to.
you know, and while we're at it, let's get rid of the microwave. They can cook like they used to.
It's too heavy. What's too heavy? The microwave. It's too heavy to throw, or else I would.
That.
What's wrong?
Are you still obsessing about not calling?
And about not having enough money to replace the remote.
Is that it?
Partly.
Well, it's a miracle that it still lives.
You gonna tell Mom I tried to break it?
Yeah. You need to learn a lesson about not attacking modern conveniences.
Rachel, can I ask you one more question?
No, I don't think they're gonna call. Ever
No.
again.
Not that.
What?
Do you really think all relationships have to die?
Yes.
And you can live with that?
feel like throwing the remote again. I guess.
You know what?
What?
I feel like throwing the phone.
Really?
Be my guest. Are you gonna come on?
Again, Ian Matsko said in the opening sentence of The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus said in the opening sentence of The Myth of Sisyphus, the major question raised by philosophy is one, and it's suicide. Is there anything really worth living for? One of our heroes, Abraham Joshua Heschel, took him up and said this one. Now, I know what Camus says, but the real significant question raised by philosophy, the only big one, is related to martyrdom. Not, is there anything worth living for? Ultimately, is there anything worth dying for? For we cannot live the truth until we find the power to die for it, said Heschel. For the suicide is an escape from the evil and a surrender to the absurdity, whereas the martyr stands as a witness to the truth in spite of sin. Hallelujah, amen. Thanks for joining us. There's a few minutes for any Q&A. Thanks, you guys. Great job. Yes.
They ended by hugging each other. It wasn't really an absurdist play.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they loved each other. It's a little bit like Dover Beach, where Matthew Arnold says, there's no meaning in the world, no certainty, no hope for pain, no help for pain. So, love, let's be true to each other. Or it's like the ending of J.E. by Archibald MacLeish, where they blow on the embers of the heart. Mankind cannot stand too much reality, so they end it by saying, well, at least we can love each other. And if it were really absurdist, they just walk away and I'm going to tell mom or something like that. What do you think about that?
I don't offer it as an absurdist play. It's prompted by those precepts, but that's part of what we are going.
I forgot how
They do end up in each other's eyes.
I forgot how Waiting for Godot ends. Something just walk off.
Yeah. There's no embrace. There's no ultimate. They're still waiting. Yeah.
You talked about SNL repeatedly.
Yeah.
Do you think that functions in the same sort of absurdist way? Do we have forms that are doing the same thing for us today?
I wouldn't say that SNL is completely absurdist, but they are, I would say, oftentimes taking up the prophetic
presuppositions that are unexamined, mocking self-importance, even mocking themselves, which is, as Heschel says, the key to wise criticism is self-criticism. Cornel West talks about this in his book, Prophetic Word for Postmodern Time. He says that the prophet, first off, the secular prophet, first off, is very focused on hypocrisy, especially his own. And I find that that's a role that's often played. Although I'm not really up on what's been going on in SNL the last 10 years. I've just not watched it. I even used to watch it religiously when I was a student. That's how long it's been on. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about levels of satire, Paul, and you and I talked about this, that I find shows like, you used to be the Simpsons, you know, Family Guy.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that I don't think a lot of audiences understand that it's satire compared to the show film. I don't think most audiences, I think maybe about half of the numbers of the audiences at home family understand satire. I think SNL has more satire in it, it's more easily digestible as satire, supposedly because perhaps it is borderline absurdist or borrows from, but you're right, absurdism, in my understanding, yeah, it can't be, you can't even see it as satire. It has to just be, it is just absurd.
Camus was married, lived faithfully. In fact, when he died in the accident, Cameron, he had the tickets to train ride where he was going to the same destination, and his agent talked him into this. That's what they're putting together, riding in the car and driving, and they had the accident there again in 46.
He was in conversation with a Catholic priest about being baptized.
Okay, yeah. I do know near the end of his life is that he would even talk to a variety of monastics and say, "I wish I had what you had," and he was getting closer and closer and closer.
James Sire talks about.
Yeah. Thank you so much.